Hi, everybody. It's the True Crime Grapevine with your host, me, Patty Lee. I'm here for you to talk about what everybody else is talking about. And hopefully, I cut you off in under 30 minutes. You can consider this like in high school where you probably not old enough, but if you're old enough, we actually had smoking areas outside, or maybe you just went to the cafeteria, you sat down next to somebody or in study hall for 30 minutes and you caught up on what was going on in the day's events at school. That's what this is, but for true crime. So, like any good gossip, let me just tell you, this is all my speculation, my allegations and shade. Everybody is innocent unless guilty by a court of law or a panel of judges, blah, blah, blah. So, just my opinion. Don't sue me. But I've been gone for 2 days because I got shots in all my arms and it felt like someone punched me so hard. But I'm back. So, let me tell you, Suzanne Morphew's body was found. Let's, if you got them, drink them. We'll drink to that. Sorry, Bear Bear. If you don't know, Suzanne Murphy was a mom who went missing from Maysville area, close to Salida, Colorado, kind of in the middle of nowhere. She was living in a huge house in a very exclusive neighborhood with hardly anybody in it. And it was Mother's Day of 2020. We were in high COVID. Nobody was able to do anything. Everybody was in lockdown. Now, Suzanne's husband, Barry, worked in construction. So he worked outside. So he did leave the house and do things. And their girls were of college age, almost college age. They were out and about at a camping trip. And so Suzanne was home alone. Now, Suzanne had been married to Barry for many, many years. Now, she kept a journal, which we don't know about because it seems like the embers of a fire at home may have consumed it. Huh. That's weird that her journal would be burnt up. But she did have a spy pen she left, and there were things retrieved off her phone and some things off Barry's phone that were supposed to be deleted. And then there was stuff she told her best friend. And it just seems like many 50-year-old, almost, she was 49, almost 40, almost 50-year-old women who have been married for a long time. Marriage wasn't so great. Bear seemed to be a little bit of a control freak. And yeah, Suzanne, she'd had enough, seems like. Just wasn't feeling it anymore. In fact, to the point where, she was talking from somebody that she had met back at home, and home being Indiana, Michigan area. Yeah, and little boyfriend on the side. Didn't really know how to get rid of Barry, though, because it seems like Barry wasn't going to be very easily to be gotten rid of, in my opinion. And then on Mother's Day, nobody could find Suzanne. And Barry on Sunday left for a, let's say, Monday work trip up north of in Broomfield, Colorado. And his truck did a bunch of weird stuff, and it seems like maybe the telematics were messed with on some of his stuff, and the Bobcat was in a weird position. There was a whole bunch of weird things that kind of made it look like Bear knew she wasn't there. One of the biggest things was there was a dish, a single steak dish left in the sink. And Bear tried to say, like they were such a romantic night. They ate off the same plate. While apparently they burned her journal. Also, the door to the master bedroom had a big crack in it, like somebody, I don't know, tried to kick it in. And there was a shell under the bed. But, probably didn't mean anything, right? Now, there were other things that led people to think, especially the biggest thing was not only this was during COVID, so people didn't just like take off and leave. And she left her purse in the car. Her phone was missing, but it had last pinged in the general area near a highway. I think it's 265. This will come up later at about 4:00 in the morning. So today, and then they thought Barry did it. He was indicted. They had a preliminary hearing, not a grand jury hearing. And stuff got all mixed up. I don't know. Maybe things work out for a reason, right? One of the things that made Barry look so bad, Barry Morphew, her husband, was that not only did he leave for a job Monday, but he left at, Mother's Day, Sunday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning or something, or 3 o'clock in the morning. So we're not sure why he left so early for a job that he couldn't have been doing on Sunday anyway, because the ordinance of Broomfield said you couldn't work. So it was really strange. And he didn't bring the right tools to do the job. And he told somebody else to meet him there. And the room smelled like bleach and blah, blah, blah. All right. But they never found a body. And it came out that within, I don't remember how long before, but one of Barry's coworkers had said they were talking about true crime. And he had said to this worker, yeah, I know how to get rid of a body and they'll never find it. And so for 3 years, nobody's. Oh, also Barry voted in. So he was like, oh, she left. She probably left with the boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. He voted that November. So she went missing in May. He voted for Trump in her name because he knew that that's who she'd vote for. So he illegally voted for her. Like, how did he know she wasn't going to vote somewhere else? It wasn't his vote, right? But how did he know that she wasn't voting? Because she was just, she just took off supposedly at that time. Anyway, yeah, her body was found within 50 miles, I believe, of their house. So if you go on a map and you Google, Salida is the biggest town near them, but Maysville is really closer to their house. It goes Maysville, Salida, and then down the highway, down 265, if you head straight south for about 45 minutes, you hit this town of Moffett. Well, a woman, a 55-year-old woman, recently this year in May, another May, went missing, and her name was Edna, and they were looking for Edna since she went missing in that Moffett, and the county, I was listening to Gray Hughes. It's pretty funny because he couldn't say it either. I believe it's a Native American name, and their G's might have W sounds. It's like Seguin County, and there's Seguin Peak. If you look up Seguin Peak in Seguin County, and there's a Seguin Peak to Silverton, Colorado trail. So this is like a little mountainous area. While they're looking for Edna around Moffett, which is just a little bit south of the peak of Seguin Mountains there, they found a body in July, which was of a man who was missing from Lakewood, which is near Denver. In fact, I think my relatives live in the suburb of Lakewood, which is over 3 hours away. He was at a bar, and somehow his body was found in the foothills of that. It's kind of crazy, right? He was found this past July while they were looking for Edna. So they did not find Edna at that time. They found this other body, which ended up being James Matoya. So still looking for Edna. Looking. Well, apparently last Friday, September 22nd, they came upon remains, and they did identification. Not Edna again, Suzanne Morphew, which was just made public at 2:47, I believe, Mountain Time. So around 5 o'clock, almost 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, everything hits the fan. Everybody's like, oh my gosh. And so we don't know anything about the state of the body. I mean, obviously skeletonized, but we don't know what they can find out. So, and Barry Morphew just recently, within the past, 3 months, filed a civil suit against Chaffee County. Weird timing. See, what's that saying? We make plans and God laughs. I mean, if we want to believe in God or a higher power or karma, it is just very interesting to me that they find Suzanne right after he's like, they're, you know, they ruined my reputation and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Barry, you should just shut your mouth. You're lucky you weren't indicted, because they had more on Barry Morphew about where he was, what he was doing, the lies he told, why he shouldn't have been doing this, all this stuff. The fact that his wife did have communications with somebody, he seems to have caught her on the phone when he came home. Her last interaction was with her boyfriend, and then he was like, hey, hey, hey. And the fact that nobody else was doing anything because it was lockdown. She didn't just get on a plane. She didn't get out of town. She didn't go anywhere without her purse and money. We all knew she was dead. Anyway, it's horrible that she is dead, obviously, but we knew she was dead because everybody said she would never have gone anywhere without her girls. And it was clear. So the fact that he tried to instigate a defamation suit, and then Suzanne's like, hey, Barry, don't forget about me, darling. So wherever you are, Suzanne, we're all looking up and giving you a thumbs up. So I hope they find Edna. And the James Matoya saga sounds like a story too. The guy was in a bar in Lakewood 3.5 hours away or something, and was found in the foothills there. So what's going on? But Colorado people, if you've paid attention, you know, they were also kind of close to Colorado Springs. That was where, there have been Colorado Springs, there's been at least 3 huge cases, including Letitia Stout. Gannon Stout lived there. There was a young lady who was buried under a horse, I believed, that she was, I think she was, I don't know for sure she was a SW, but some person attacked her, stalked her, like got rid of her. They finally found her there. And what was the third big one? Oh, the family one where the guy went out to Dinosaur Park with his kids in the middle of the winter, saying he was camping, and they were like 2 and 3. And I don't remember the names of that. Sorry. If you remember, hey, put it in the chat. Like and subscribe, blah, 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 all that stuff. Anyways, how happy are you that Suzanne at least has been found and can be put to rest, which is great for her family. Also, do you think Barry did it? Put it in the comments. I would love to know. I think Barry did it. But maybe not. Maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. The evidence seemed pretty strong, but maybe not. Anyways, her phone ping, the last one, was on the way down, like that highway that you would take down to the Moffett area. So, it fits, and it's opposite of where Barry went that day. Because remember, he went to Broomfield, which was north. So he's like, no, it's going to be very interesting. I know a lot of people like to dump bodies in that area. All right. So, there's a new case number 2. Take a drink. This is interesting. So it looks like there was this missing family and the dad wasn't concerned. And so how often have we heard about, wife and 3 kids, and maybe she's 5 months pregnant, her mom thought, which is interesting that her mom just thinks this. Well, the family's name is Cook. Her name is Lauren Cook. Her husband's name, I believe, is Jason Cook. So they live in Virginia. It's interesting because the family was being visited by their local, either, I don't know if the Department of Family Services or if it was Children Protective Services, but they had visited the house and they wanted her to come in for an emergency meeting. They were concerned about the family. They had gotten a report. So this was the Friday before Labor Day weekend. And so she said she'd come in, and the court date was September 5th for this emergency meeting about the children. She did not make that because she was gone. Now, her claim is she called into a newspaper. She did not go to any local, she was reported missing September 15th, 18th. So this started September 2nd, 3rd, she goes missing with her 3 kids. Now she's claiming to the Messenger, this newspaper in Virginia, that this was a pre-planned vacation. But she also said she was very nervous that she was getting the information that somebody had tattled and told horrible things to CPS that weren't true, that there was abuse, that there was a cult, there was neglect. Now, they do homeschool these kids, and their ages are, I think, 7, 4, and 3, and maybe she's pregnant. And I'm not going to say the kids' names because they're underage, 2 boys and a girl. So she left with them, and then I think her husband showed up, but they're like, no, like Lauren is supposed to be here. Then they reset it for like September 13th, and she didn't show up for that one. And that's after that is when her mom reported her missing. They said a family member. So it's reported they think it's the mom. Then she missed a 3rd court date on September 20th. So everybody's looking for her. And apparently she got freaked out enough because it was starting to ramp up. You know, when there's a husband saying, no, my wife, she's fine. And she and the 3 kids, no problem, especially if she might be pregnant. That's usually a recipe for they're fine, means they're fine somewhere taking a dirt nap. So apparently she called in and she's afraid so she's on this pre-planned vacation. So she's not admitting to running away from court, but she said she got freaked out by these people trying to take her away from her kids, and that's not going to happen. So she still hasn't made contact, and you can't get off a missing persons list unless police somewhere, anywhere, physically see you and make contact with you. There was a case we had talked about last year early about a girl named Jill and her, I think it was her daughter that she had with her and a boyfriend. And it did look like maybe she had been kidnapped, but the police actually did make contact with her. And after that point, they couldn't do anything about it. So in this case, she called a newspaper. I don't know if they did a video call. I mean, I don't know if they can confirm it's her. So they're still looking. The police are still looking for her. And I don't know if it was a pre-planned vacation. And she said she's spending all of their money and their business is getting ruined. And I think their business is growing pot, which I don't know if that's legal in Virginia. So there's a whole lot of things. I don't know who reported her. Those are just allegations. I don't know exactly what she was reported for. All I know is that she ran. And we know it's not a good idea to run, even when you're nervous of authorities. So the Cook case should be an interesting one to continue to follow. Okay, 3rd case, the Delphi case. The state has responded to that big 136-page motion by the defense. And now remember, the defense said like there were more. The important things that the defense said, instead of getting all into the that there was, ritualistic Odinist, white nationalist involved, putting all that aside, they said, look, there were more cars than what you said. There wasn't just his car. In fact, the car that you described did not match his car. He left earlier. The person that was seen, that was supposedly him, seen bloody and muddy, the woman actually said it was a man with a tan coat, and she saw this 126 days later. It was a blue coat, supposedly, and she said tan, and she did say muddy. She didn't say bloody. So that was a misinterpretation. And so was there really enough to go and violate somebody's Fourth Amendment rights to illegal search and seizure? Could they really go into his house based on what? So he was the one who went and said, when they were asking for who was in the park and what did they say, he was one of the people that went and talked to the game warden. And they said his name was written down differently because the guy wrote down his street name as his last name. So they didn't catch it right away and blah, blah, blah. And so 4 years later, they're like, oh, this guy did it. He was in the park. So Was he in the park exactly when they said? He claims he left by 1:30. They're saying he was there at least till 4:30, but the evidence shows a very posed, meticulous scene. Could one person do all that? I mean, and they didn't. It just seems and they didn't find those girls until the next morning, even though they looked all around as soon as they were missing, into the evening until it got dark, and they weren't that far away from the bridge along the banks. So what really happened? The state is saying, look, he admitted to being in the park. He looks like the guy because he also he said he was wearing a hat, and he said he was wearing a blue jacket. Of course, if you've been in rural Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, every man has a blue or tan Carhartt jacket, wears jeans, and wears a cap. But so he admitted to being in the park, at least at the time, for sure, that the girls were there. They dropped off. Now, they basically that, plus he admitted, they said when he came in for a second round of questioning after they figured out who he was and brought him back in and said, so you were in this park? Yeah. Okay. So they asked him, so do you have guns and knives at home? Again, rural Indiana. Do you have guns and knives at home? Is it? Yeah. I mean, again, the big thing was supposed to be where his car was, and that they saw a man walking along that Route 300 all bloody and muddy. Okay, so did they, in the state's filing to speak back to the defense motion about the Franks hearing, did they say, no, she did say bloody and muddy, and she did describe him? They didn't address that. They left that alone. Did they say anything about that there actually were more cars there seen later, and that wasn't really Richard Allen's car? They didn't deal with any other cars being there. So, and they totally ignored anything having to do with the FBI behavioralist, anything having to do with the Purdue professor, anything having to do with other suspects that had been looked at initially within the first 3 days that had ties to the girls. Remember, one of the guys named in it, his son was dating, going with, because they were kids, Abby. Now, so they didn't mention any of those main points that the defense could say, look, you didn't have enough. There were other cars there. You just failed to tell that in the affidavit. The woman said just muddy, and she came forward 126 days later, whereas the descriptions of the people that you were handing out, that was people who saw them 3 days, like 3 hours after it happened or whatever. So right away. So you remember there were different problems with the sketches. So basically the state is like going, no, look, we went to his house and we found a gun, which was a Glock, which apparently is also carried by law enforcement a lot. And it was cycled through. And if you guys had listened to any ballistic testimony, and when they start talking, I don't like the word junk science, because I think science, of all science ever, of any subject, has a trajectory towards, you start with it being very descriptive. One case, this is interesting. Then you look for other cases. You start describing them more. Then you look for characteristics. Then you start to try to measure those characteristics until you actually develop a tool to measure it. And then you can start doing experimental research. All right. And the development of tools is always, once you get a description everybody can agree on of an event or a phenomenon, it's always really hard then to find good tools. And our tool development gets better and better and better, like with DNA, and like with blood splatter, and like with fingerprints. And there's all these things that aren't perfect, but we keep getting better at doing them. And ballistics is one of those things. So a gun cycling through, not shooting, because I think the grooves and the striates on a bullet that, like if you have the shell casing that has been shot through a gun. That is a better fingerprint, because every time a gun is used and over time, even things change inside of it. So it develops a sort of unique identifying feature through those grooves and striations, which is the marks on the shell casing as it's being shot through the gun barrel. Cycling through, but not shooting, just putting a mark on it, I think you can tell what type of gun makes that uh, cycling mark, but it's not exactly the same as like striations and grooves, in my opinion. And I'm in no way a freaking expert on any of this. I'm just saying, and the girls weren't shot. And yes, we know there was a gun used, but so someone probably had a gun that was a Glock, probably. Or I just don't know. It seems like they're really trying to make Richard Allen fit by saying, yeah, I mean, they never found anything with Abby and, as far as we know, with Abby and Libby's DNA at his place, on his clothes. They found a blue jacket, a Carhartt jacket, but it didn't, I don't believe it had their blood on it. So what I'm saying is, should they have waited? If they thought it was him, should they have waited? I don't know. It seems really strange. And if you're saying in your head, but Patty, yeah, he confessed over and over again. If we're watching the Ruby Franks case, we know that you can make anybody confess to anything if you're hurting them and you say, I'll make this stop. And that's what they're claiming. And there was another person that claimed Richard Allen was being hurt in jail. Now, if it was Odinist or not, I don't know. But do you remember the judge dropped? There's something weird. Indiana's got some weird things going on in it. And I don't like that the judge dropped out right away because he was like fearful. It was all very, very strange. So, yeah, I don't think the response addressed what the defense was saying. The major points of the defense was you didn't have enough specifically on him, and you left out things that pointed to other people. And when you did that, it narrowed it to, so it looked like, oh my gosh, yes, let's go look at him. He's probably it. I don't know. I think I have no idea what's going to happen. But I think the best case, again, which who would knew this would be the best case, but the Wagner case in Ohio is a great example of what police have to do. That was the one where the whole family was unalived in different houses. And it was about a custody of one child. And they eventually figured out that maybe it was about the baby, but then they didn't have the guns. Boy, they went and waited and found the guns were hidden in a goose trap, I think, in a pond left over. And the family had moved to Alaska, then moved back. I mean, they went and got Walmart receipts for the shoes that they wore. And it took a really long time. But the thing was, by the time it went to trial, it was clear they did it. This was, I mean, you don't always have to have a why, but I mean, it was very clear. They had all the forensics. They did it. And that's why they got the convictions. But it took like 8 years to figure it out. And it was scary because, you know, this was a whole family unalived. I think it was 8 people in 3 different locations, the Rhodes family. So the little girls in Delphi, it's horrific. But when we want to hurry up and just pin it on somebody and be done with it without a lot of confirmation evidence. I mean, I want their blood on his clothes, or I want him to have kept something of them that they found at his house. There has to be that exchange principle. That's why I'm really not very happy. Oops, I'm almost at 30 minutes. That is how we avoid putting somebody in jail that looks good for it, but really didn't do it. And that it is way more common than you think. I mean, I think I often like, oh, this person, blah, blah, blah. And then we actually get a bunch of forensic evidence. I'm like, okay, well, I was completely wrong. That's who did it. But sometimes it takes a long time. All right. And there's a few updates really quickly. Like Rex Heerman was in court today for a pretrial hearing. Now, his wife has requested that she and her son and daughter, that they get all those guns back. Remember, there were like 900 guns. Was it 900? No, like 300, almost 300 guns. I think he had 90 that were registered, and the rest were not registered. We don't know if she's going to get those guns back. Apparently, she wants to sell them. So, I mean, do we blame her? I do not. So, but I don't know if they have to test all those. We have no idea if any of the victims were shot. If so, then they have to test all of them and get all the data before they'd be able to hand them. I don't know. It sounds like a mess. So who knows if that's going to happen. In the Rachel Morin case, the Maryland mom, 37 years old, who was unalived. And that for sure, you guys, I thought for sure it had to be the guy she was dating or one of her children's fathers. And it was some wacko stranger from California, a DNA hit that this guy had done this before. Everybody was talking about they said it had been like an 8 or 9-year-old girl that he had assaulted in California. And they said the arm that you can see in that thing is actually, it was a male arm. There were more people at that house. So I'm not sure exactly of the circumstances, but the reward is up to $20,000 now. I don't know. They just wanted to let us know that wasn't the little girl's arm. That was a male's arm. They know who it is, and the person is not connected at all. So I guess he was found in the house, and everything was stopped before it went too far, and then they shoved him out, and that's what we see on the video. And last but not least, we have, oh yes, Chad Dorman. He has a next, I believe it's in July next year. He will be, he has his trial date was set. Chad Dorman is the man who unalived 3 of his little boys, and then he tried to shoot the teenage girl, and then he shot through his wife's hand. That was in Southern Ohio. So they set a trial date. I mean, I don't know what his excuse is. People saw him, so that's not really a mystery. But anyways, raise a glass to Suzanne Morphew. Her remains have been found. She will be laid to rest. Thank goodness. Who knows? By now, maybe we have a statement from Bear Bear. Should be interesting. If he's quiet, I mean, I don't know. What can the guy say? What do you think? Hey, like and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow night to tell you about what happened, what's going to happen in the future. Anyways, thanks for hanging out. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Bye.